All right, hello everyone, and welcome back into the Countersin podcast and to episode 47. My name is Jamie Joyner, and I'm joined, as always, by my fellow co-host, Mr. Matthew Lacey. How are you?
Hi, Jamie. Yeah, good man. How are you?
Yeah, doing
Yeah,
really well, thank you.
yeah, good.
Good to be
Good, good,
back.
good. Mm-hmm.
And we've also got Mr. Harry Sermon.
Hello, good evening.
Hey,
Once again, Monday morning, lads. Monday evening.
Monday morning.
Well,
Wow, what time?
Don't tell me that.
What time zone are you
definitely
in?
Monday.
Yeah, it's
Definitely a
definitely an
Monday, though.
evening. I can tell you that.
Yeah,
Are we all well?
Yeah.
yeah, good, 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 good.
Doing good. Ready for another evening chatting about drums. This week, we've been just discussing just before we jumping on about. Well, really, it's kind of come about through a scenario that a couple of us has had in teaching, just regarding listening to music and how we pull that apart and just how important it is to actively. Pick apart the music and actively listen to music, analyze it, but also just have knowledge of other instruments and how they play into it, not just the drums,
Yeah.
And it came about for me anyway. This is sort of setting the scene for me. I was teaching a student. We're teaching them online, and we'd learned the entire of Yellow by Coldplay. Fairly straightforward song. We've been doing all the different sections to a click and been going really well. And then I was like, right, cool. Right, we're ready to play along to the backing track, to the actual song. And we sort of played it and she's like, oh yeah, I can, that sounds great. I like the song and stuff. And then I was like, cool, you ready? And she's just like, how do I do it? How do I know when to come in? And, where are the drums and that sort of stuff. Like she couldn't hear it. She didn't know. And I guess for us, that can be something that you can just take for granted. Like, oh, there's a guitar, or, oh yeah, the drums just came in, or that was a drum fill. I think as drummers, you're avid listeners to other drummers, and you're watching them all day, every day. So you can tell, like, oh, they just played triplets, or, they just did a huge 1-bar tom fill or whatever. You know that stuff. But for a student that's never played to a backing track before, that sort of stuff can be pretty difficult.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I had to then be like, you hear the acoustic guitar at the beginning there. That's eighth notes, and you've got to try and imagine that that's your hi hat. There are 4 beats in the bar. It happens 4 times, and then you're in, and that's when you start. And then she's like, well, how do I know how fast to go? And then you explain in tempo, and you explain you got to listen for the snare and stuff. And I'm like, these are hard questions,
Yeah.
But for me as a drummer, you kind of like, oh yeah, you just start with the drums and you just line yourself up. But
Yeah.
having a little bit of knowledge of like, okay, can you hear the guitar there? And she's like, yeah, I can hear that. Okay, cool. That's just the first step. That's a really important step. And I think that it's very easily looked over. So I just found myself having to come up with these new ways of sharing that bit of knowledge. And yeah, I just wondered, like, have you guys had any sort of similar situations with your students, or when you've been learning songs? Like, how useful have you found it to know what else is going on in the song apart from just the drum parts?
Harry, you got.
Yeah.
You go first.
Yeah.
Harry.
No. Yeah. Well, just as we were obviously discussing earlier, when we talked about this, I had a similar question from a student at school, and basically the question was essentially, how do you know what is happening in the music? Not in terms of like notes and stuff like that. Obviously, if you have the sort of knowledge, you can kind of, some notes are sort of pretty recognizable. And if you've got a great sort of theory knowledge and stuff like that, yeah, I'm sure you can definitely pick it all apart super easily, as we do with like, oh, there's a snare drum on the hand of 4, or the way that they do that, linear fill or whatever. We can kind of do that with drums, right? But it was more like, how do you know what instruments are playing? Which, like you were saying, Jay, in your sort of story, to me, a guitar is very obviously a guitar. And it's very obviously a snare drum. It's very obviously a bass or piano. So what we did and actually I was, and I wasn't, as all of us teachers do. I wasn't like, well, what do you mean? It's so obvious, duh, sort of thing. And generally, the question really floored me because I was like, one, it was really cool to get a question like that, the sort of, excitement almost when they were just like, how do you do it? And the sort of, I don't really know what I'm trying to think of, but like they were clearly invested enough to think
and
that
not
far.
worried about asking the question and being embarrassed by not knowing and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was genuine curiosity, which is really exciting.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
So what I did, I was like, okay, and it was as we were leaving the lesson, I was like, right, ask me that again next week, and we'll listen to some music. We don't do a lot of listening at all, really, in our lessons. It's like we pick a song at the beginning of term, and then we're all about playing. So I kind of took the opportunity to play a couple of different songs and just sat there with the whole band and just said, put your hand up and tell me what you hear. Start with Seven Nation Army, which is obviously kind of really simplistic in its arrangement. There's not a lot to that song, and I think it's fairly obvious without sort of saying that to the person that asked the question. They've been doing the sort of band thing that I do in schools with me for a good year and a half now, so they're not like new to it or anything, and they're really good as well. It's, there's a bass guitar. Oh, there's drums coming in. Okay, what's just happened? Oh, some singing started. Okay, cool. So, and then I think we did another song that had a bit of a busier arrangement. Yeah. And then the last song that I put on was Sledgehammer, Peter Gabriel, which we were just talking about. And it's kind of like all the songs that I played up until that point were sort of, an instrument
layers,
intro, and then it was layers every 4 bars, 2 bars, whatever it is, something would happen. Whereas Sledgehammer was just everything all in.
Like Mr. Gabriel has to get all clever.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So yeah, I was like, just literally just go for it, say whatever you think. And I kind of was, again, kind of what you said, Jay, when you're like, how fast do I go? How do I know? It's like when a little kid, you ask them to stop doing something and they just go, why? Or they ask, they ask you something and you just like, oh, it's because it is. And they're like, yeah, but why? You're just like, I have absolutely no answer for this question.
It's sort of like, why is the sky blue sort of question?
It just is.
It is. There is a scientific reason, but we accept it.
Yeah. The amount of times I've been like, and we're going to do the next note in our chord sequence is E. And they're like, why? I'm like,
because it is.
It just is.
It says it on the page.
Yeah. Because whoever decided. And it was, they actually, I think from the discussion we had, they found it really, really insightful. And I just sort of said, well, the next time you listen to music, they're all pretty much into their music, which is great. I just said, just listen and just see what you can pick out. I'm not talking, notes and specific drums and so on. I said, just have a little listen and think to yourself, and you got your headphones in next, and just see what you can, think about and imagine the band. Okay, imagine, the people that surround us in this room right now. Imagine what it would look like if those people were playing those songs. And I said, again, they were really interested and they were sort of kind of like mind blown sort of thing. And I said, it can even get to the point where, as I said, people can recognize chords and notes and progressions, and even to drums. We could probably tell you what drum they're playing. Is that a Black Beauty? It probably is, tuned way down low with a CS dot on the head.
It's not one of yours then, is it?
Yeah, it's not one of mine. And Aquarian Superkick 2, and I could probably tell you the microphone that was using. I said it goes really, really deep, And I think I also kind of use the example of the way that your ears probably hear music is like this, for the visuals, for the listeners, a small box. And then the way that musicians listen to music, it's like, a universe almost size, So when you hear things, you can't unhear them. It was the same when I studied music tech at school. My kind of teacher was just like, you're never going to listen to music the same ever again, because you're just going to notice that frequency there is cut, or they put this on the hi-hat mic or whatever it is, or they've EQ'd that. You're never going to hear it the same, for better or for worse. Obviously,
it'd be genuinely interesting to listen to music, to be able to compare listening to music if you had never learnt drums. I sometimes think, imagine if I hadn't learnt any instrument, and I was listening to music, what would I think of it? If I knew nothing about kicks and snares and 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, or guitars or anything, I'd just be going off of, I assume just be going off of the way it makes me feel. And just
you like
the
it 'cause
vibe.
it makes you feel
I had
a
friend of mine came to a few friends. This is going back a few years now. Came to a gig. I played it with my blues trio, the rock trio that we are kicking about. We might get back together again, but
Nice.
she came up to me at the end and she said, "How do you all know what to do?"
I love that question.
And it's like,
I love that question. I love that question.
And she's like, because I've played 2 45-minute sets, and she's like,
Yeah.
"You've got no. How do you remember that all?"
Yeah.
You know, and because she's not got any musical background or context, or
Yeah.
I don't know, she might have played an instrument at in junior school or whatever, 35 whatever years ago. But it's that point, Jay. You said it's so what we take for kind of well, we're going to play 8 bars here and 4 there, and then it's going to be changed, and I'll do a stop, and then we're going to it's the key change, and then what we're going to finish. Okay, we'll stop there. You do that, and then I'll come in on the.
This is the thing. Like I often think this. Like when I go to a gig, I go to see a band play, and I'm like, oh yeah, he's using this gear, and it's this size bass drum, and it's achieving this sound, and oh yeah, he's using this pedal for his guitar. I'm like, oh, and that's why that chord works, and he's playing this time signature.
Yeah.
And then I look at the person next to me, and they're just like screaming all the words, and like they're having the best time. And I'm like, I mean, I'm having a great time, just like nerding out and all the other little things, but. This is 2 completely different experiences here of the same gig.
Can you imagine going to a gig and singing out loud and enjoying yourself, Jamie? It's ridiculous.
Who would
even do that?
I do my fair share of that, obviously. Are you not the guy like at the back, like just on your tiptoes, just like, I just want to see like what Zildjian is that, And I'm like, I'm always like that, and I'm sure. Listeners can relate, it's not the same when you go and you see the real deal. Like if you went and saw the Foo Fighters, I wouldn't just, I would want to see everything about the setup and what they're doing and how they're running the show and the lights and everything. I'd be so interested in it. And yes, I'm like ready to go and yell all the words, but that stuff interests me. Whereas I wonder how much that stuff interests anyone that doesn't play music. Like, do they care?
I think you can kind of like, it's like a blessing and a curse, isn't it? You can pick out all these little things. When I went to see Ben Howard in October, there was definitely some issues going on with like sound and so on. And I everyone was enjoying the gig, and I just said to my girlfriend and my friends, I was like, I think he's going to walk off in a minute. He took his in-ears out and stormed off, and then came back. But you could just see something's wrong. But you'd only be able to figure that out if you like were a musician. And like I went to see Def Cab for Cutie a few years ago. Of Jay, big fan as well. And about a great gig. People at the front singing their heart, dancing, grooving. People next to me loving it. And I was stood with the drummer friend, and about probably 4 or 5 songs in, we just sort of like turned to each other and we're just like, you can really hear the S's and the P's really popping over the microphone, like extremely, and just like completely ruined the gig. Just like could not hear. I like not hear that for the rest of like any little word he said. But people at the front, just everyone in the room loved it. It was a great gig, but I was just like, for the vocals, for me, that's all I could hear was the S's and the poppers, But
going back to that, going back to this kind of student thing. I've got a student, and she's listening to music, and she likes listening to the Police, and she's into kind of Stuart Copeland, and she loves the Foo Fighters. And the thing that I took for granted, that question is unanswerable, is that she said, well, his drums don't sound like mine, so how do I know which ones he's hitting and which ones I should hit? Because when we listen, I don't know about you guys, you can either nod or shake your heads, but I'm listening. Wait till I've said the question. I'm listening to music specifically at the minute, actively listening. And we can talk about active and passive, but because I'm learning a depth gig I've got in a week's time or 2 weeks. I've got rehearsal tomorrow, so I want to be ready for rehearsal, not ready for the gig. And I'm really digging into these songs, which I've heard loads, but I'm really actively listening and charting them out. And there's a few different cover versions of songs. I know the original, but this is a heavier cover version, and so I'm listening to those. Oh, it's different arrangement. I'm really listening, and I said, well, it's you can hear where the snare drum is. Oh, that doesn't sound like mine, but that's on the 2 and the 4. And when we listen to music, in my head, I've got a mind's eye of what I would be doing on my kit.
Yeah, always. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, even if I haven't got 9 concert toms, or maybe I'm
Little
playing
splashes and stuff.
Yeah, I've
How
not
you
got
would
4
play it.
splashes, but it's how I would play it on my kit.
Yeah.
And in my mind's eye, I'm working out the mechanics of what I would do.
Yeah, huge. Always.
But when
doing
you've
that.
not got, I'm coming to listening to that after years of experience playing the drums. But when you've not got years of experience playing the drums, you just try to hear things that sound the same as your kit. It's that's is that one that or that one? Well, they've probably got more than 2 crashes. You've got 1 crash and a ride, so so you would just play the same crash, So that's really intriguing for me that you've kind of, we've all been presented with those questions which have actually nothing to do with technically playing, being good at playing the drums and having good coordination.
Yeah,
and it's the musicality and being able to dig into. I do that thing you talk about, kind of unpicking music in a live situation, but I've got a nasty habit of doing that. If I'm watching a film and I end up listening to the score, and I'll say to my partner, "Oh, this is an interesting bit," because what they've done, they've kept that bit low, and even though it's exciting to build the tension, they're now playing in half time. It's all that. And if what I can recommend, if anyone's got Disney Plus, to watch the documentary on John Williams. It is fantastic.
I have to watch that. Yeah.
The first bomb he drops is the beginning. He's got 27 pianos, and they're all over the world. But just as a whet your appetite. But how the importance of the music makes. Classic example in Jaws. And all of the other songs and why he's written the music he has written for the film. You can really start to unpick it and get to know it. But similarly, I've had students that can play to a click, and we put the song on, and they just start playing, but they're on the 2. They start on the 3 of the counting.
Yeah.
And there might be you're not playing anything. So it's getting people to understand the context of the framework of how music generally works, with some overarching rules of 4 bars, 8 bars.
I think it comes from a lot of things as well, of like learning, like playing the drums is one thing, watching someone play the drums or song, whatever the example is, listening to that, imagining yourself, like all these different things to sort of spiral off of like playing the drums. But they all like massively inform. Like I never had, exactly the context. I never had access to like any kind of kit or anything like that when I was like first studying, apart from the 20 minutes I had in school and a practice pad. But I was like almost like religiously watching drum covers, drum videos, live performances, gigs and stuff like that. And like that's definitely had to have informed how I approach like so many things. Like I would like. All my friends would like go and watch telly or whatever. We watch like a TV show, but I would just watch like Red Hot Chili Peppers live set at like 1989 or whatever it is, and just like watch all these different gigs and just like study it. And like you said, when you're listening to it, I'm imagining how I would play that. And even now, like anytime I'm listening to a song, like in the background, I'm just like imagining myself like playing it and imagining I hit my crash there, or and then you get into like the minutiae of like the sound and how you'd set up the kit and what you'd use and all that sort of stuff, and it's all informed.
I think
all massive.
I think some people are a little bit more like natural at it than others to be able to sort of pick out that stuff. Occasionally I get students that come in and they've never played drums, but they listen to a lot of music, but they don't play any other instruments, but they know like, oh, this sounds pretty funky, or like I can hear a really cool bass line there. Or we play with like you put on Enter Sandman or something, and they'll be like, I can tell those crashes are going with the guitars and stuff like that. You can pick out rhythms, and they've got the ear to be like, I can see the band are doing something together. Or I don't know. There's like, if you take This Love by Maroon 5, that like piano-y bass line, and you're like following it with the bass drum pedal. Like the ability to sort of pick out, there's this thing going on and we're going to match that. That I feel like with some students you can just say, you just got to copy what they do, and they're like,
just sing the song,
clicks, And we all know, like, you listen to drummers like Eddie Thrower with LTA and with Busted stuff, and how he's so good at taking a little vocal line or a little like guitar rhythm and just making that musical and highlighting it on the drum kit. I think it's such a sort of gift in itself, like, to be able to hear that. And it's not just like you've got a sort of set part that you have to stick to. It's I'm enhancing something that I can hear. And I think those students are great, because it just means that they've got like this ear to kind of see how what they're learning can be applied to a context immediately. And it's not like I've learned these things, what do I do with them?
And I think that's probably, I don't know, but maybe that's where the drums as an instrument kind of is, and we like to think we're set aside from everyone else anyway, wouldn't we? But in terms of, I think we get so hung up, and understandably, when we've got new students or people kind of at beginner level or whatever, we get so hung up on the mechanics of playing the instrument. You can't imagine a piano teacher talking to a piano, right? So you have your fingers like this, and make sure when you press the key down, you're using this knuckle, and we don't go into the mechanics of how you're playing the piano necessarily to start off with. But what those instruments are doing, like guitars and saxophone, cello, violin, piano, by learning to play a song, they are playing music. Whereas when we learn to play a song, we are playing rhythm. And it's more of the conversation. The hard, I think, is people have got great coordination, or they naturally they can put a 2/4 groove together in a relatively short space of time. And I've got a couple of really kind of young students who are about 10, just under 10, 11, maybe 9, and they're kind of doing they've done debut grade and they're doing grade 1, and now they understand the equation of what's in a bar and where those bass drums are. They're like, oh, okay, and I put one in front of them, and they go, right, have a go at the first line, and they play it.
Visually can see it.
But they've got no context of the style, the dynamic. They've got to wait for 2 bars because there's a guitar intro. If they didn't have the music in front of them, I say, right, come in when you think it's ready to come in. They might come in on beat 3 of bar 2, halfway through a guitar intro. And
that's funny.
It's learning the musicality as opposed to the mechanics of the instrument, which I think is...
I have a student that's done the opposite of that. We're just starting to read a little bit, and we're doing a grade 2 piece, and he's been listening to the track a lot and just basically followed the track. It's in the Trinity, I think.
It's YYZ.
No, it's called Lava Lamp. I can't remember. Is it Trinity? I can't remember what it's called. It's like an orange cover. It's called Lava Lamp, and it's basically just like 16th notes in the hi-hat for like the whole song. And then like a sort of da 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 dun, da dun, da sort of beat, like in the C section, and then it goes back to the returns to the A section. It's back to the hi hat with like a couple of crashes on some slightly odd beats, but there's like a horn line that goes and you just keep the hi hat going. Whereas when I came in the other week, he was like on the hi-hat, and he was going and doing that on the snare, not even reading it, but just listened to it so much that he just took it out and was done that. And I was like, that's really cool. But if we look at the dots, we're not doing any of that. But he was like, but it sounds cool, and I'm matching up with the instruments. It's like, exactly.
Perfect.
And it's the exact opposite of your situation. Matt, of like, I can read the dots, but I don't really understand like the framework of it all.
Has your student, Harry, has he played with other musicians and stuff, or does he just listen?
He used to do Rocksteady. He used to do Rocksteady, so it was very much sort of like, oh, what about this? And maybe we could get the keyboards to do this, and we're just like, but
So I think that could be something that it's always what I encourage my students to like play with some other people, because you're not going to learn that stuff. Like you can't respond to anything. You're just replicating whatever's on the page. But if you're with your mates and I don't know, you reach a section and it's like, I need to give this more energy. What am I going to do? Having that, then that's, I guess our job is to give them like this skill set of like, if you want to, build it, this is stuff you can do, or if you want to bring it down, then this is another thing you can do, and that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's not the sort of thing that is easy to teach, because you need to play in context, don't you? Stuff.
When Harry, you mentioned there, Harry, about the B section and it kind of the A section, and going back to this verse, or whatever. That whole concept of sections is specifically, I guess, when I go to a lot of jazz jams or blues jams, it's backbeat in blues, no backbeat in jazz. It's pretty much the same. If I'm going to get shot for that, but in terms of the context of what we're playing, I've been to a jazz jam and I'm sat in on drums for 3 songs, whatever, because I'm not calling the tunes. I've just been asked to sit in, and I'm going to play now whatever the frontline player that's come up is going to call. And again, that context of people not played with other people. This guy wanted to play acoustic guitar, play a song, kind of like a gypsy jazz type thing, or a Parisian type jazz thing, and it just was about to start. Was, okay, ready, and then he just started.
Yeah,
and then the guy who knew him, because I think he was part of his kind of. He runs music classes for groups, but imagine like Rocksteady, but for kind of adults, after evening classes type thing, Yeah. And he said, "Hang on. You need to give the band instructions." And he's like, "Oh, so what tempo?" Because I'm almost like, "What tempo? If you've got a tempo in mind," and most times, medium. So it's like 110 or 190.
You get like a little. Cool.
Just me. I said, "Well, you sing the tune, sing it, and then I'll pick it up from there." And that's all. Is it a ballad? You want it swing? Is it bop? Or is it Latin? Because you can pick a jazz standard and play it 4 different ways. So and they go, "Oh," and they realise that they've been playing along to a tape or video, CD or video at home or whatever, or Spotify, drum, these drumless tracks that are on Spotify, but there's also bassless tracks and guitarless tracks, or saxophone, backing track for saxophone or whatever. They've not had to communicate; they just press play and play along, and then so what are we going to do? We'll play the last 4 bars of because what's the form? Is it A B A B A C?
Yeah.
Let's play. Is it 34 bar turnaround, 32, 36?
Yeah.
And that framework of understanding, well, I'd never played this song before, but you're going to count us in. We're going to play the last 4 of the turnaround, and then we're going to be in at the top at A.
Yeah.
And I know that we've got 8 bars, 8 bars, 8 bars, and 8 bars, and 8, 8, 8, 6, or whatever it might be. And that's the framework that's holding all those musicians that aren't even talking to each other together, and getting to that point where you can turn up and discuss and define to people you've just met. So it's going to be about this tempo. 1, 2, 3. Okay, right, and
which is very typical of that kind of music, though. All that music as freeing as it is in terms of improvising, has always got those limitations of it's this chord progression and it's this sort of structure and A and the B, and I think without either studying that music, or even as like a drummer studying like from grade book, you could probably go very far without really even understanding any of that sort of stuff, because in the other world it would just be like a verse and a chorus. Hi-hat in the verse and a ride in the chorus, and just basically groups of 8.
And
like
it's a middle 8. It's called a middle 8.
Yeah.
Why is it called a middle 8?
It's 8, but and then you do a drum fill to get in and out of all those sections, and then you end.
But listening to like the bass line, or like great example, 12 bar blues, as we talked about just before we came on, in terms of like if he goes back to the 4, if the harmonica, because I play a harmonica player, or it might be guitarist, says, well, go back to the 4 chord or whatever. He holds his four fingers up, the whole rhythm section. Everyone knows now. Right, I'm going to play a little fill here because we're going to play the last 4 bars again, and then we're ending. So knowing it's not just about counting the bars; it's about where are we in the musical phrase, which is going to then lead to the next thing.
This was going to be another question I had for you, Matt, especially in that jazz context. Actually, what you're talking about now is very much like it's structure, it's A B A or whatever that is. It's number of bars for turnaround, its tempo, like that. It's all very like, as drummers, I think we can understand that, you know, relatively well. You don't have to like play piano in order to be able to understand that. And it's very rhythmic or very structurally. And obviously, like when you're learning songs and stuff, even outside of a jazz context, like most of the time it's like, okay, what time signature am I in? And how long is the intro? You know, how many times do I play the chorus at the end? You know, how do we stop? Like that. That's basically
how do we start? How do we stop?
Yeah. And you figure the rest out. You don't really have to have that much of a knowledge of like how to play the piano, how to play the guitar and stuff. But do you think that helps? You know, do you think it helps to have some sort of knowledge of? I guess there's two sides to it. There's like a physical side of like to be able to play that thing, or I think potentially like my answer would be like just being able to hear certain things, like knowing that like what the four chord sounds like or what the dominant fifth sounds like, and just being able to hear those qualities can I think be quite helpful.
So.
But yeah, you
short answer. Short answer. The second one for me, because I've had guitar lessons many years ago, and I taught myself some piano. But when I'm playing jazz, let's say for argument's sake, I'm playing with a double bassist, a pianist, and a jazz guitarist. Even though I've got some insight into having played a bit of piano and some guitar and done a bit of arpeggio stuff, I'm not looking at him going, he's just played an E, so that means now we're near the. That I don't know it. I might not even know what key they're in.
Yeah.
But within the context of the framework, when he plays that chord, okay, we're going to change now. And because you can feel the resolution. Not yet. Now we've resolved. Now it's So it's the context of the sound within the chord structure. I don't know if we're in C, has he just played an E? He says he's gone to the four chord. Okay, well, I don't know whether that's a B or an A flat or whatever, but I know where that chord sits in the 12 bar. You know what I mean? So, and listening to the bass line or whatever that might be doing, because you can say, he's gone there, which means he's going to resolve, which means now we're going to go to the B section.
It's taking little like little cues, isn't it? Just from this, you don't necessarily have to.
I'm not counting
the mechanics of it.
I'm not counting. Oh, right, this is 8 bars, 8 bars. A B A. I'm not counting. Right, 8 bars, change.
Yeah.
8. I'm just. We all know how long 8 bars is.
Yeah.
And sounds and feels like.
Yeah, and I'm going to react to what the bass player does or the melody does in the change, both dynamically. Sonically, you know, am I going to play ride? Am I going to go to hi-hat? Am I going to go to second ride? You know, have I started the tune on brushes? Am I going to, hang on, we've picked up a bit now. Right, good job I've got those sticks on my floor tom. I'm going to go to ride now. That's not coming from the counting of knowing what chord we're in, you know, or what key we're in, or what the chord phrase, or even counting the bars. It's come from a feeling.
Yeah.
And that,
you can't teach that. Like
I was going to try. I'm glad you said that, because I would have sounded a bit.
You have to have experience with that, and it's like if you just tell a drummer to sit down and groove, they'll get to the end of the 4 bars and they'll want to play. They'll do something. They'll lift a hi-hat. They'll add a little drag. They'll put a little fill in.
Yeah, guilty as charged drummer.
Yeah, we're all very good at that. But you know, that's something which. As a beginner, you probably don't know where to put those things, but then when you've been playing for years, it's like you can't stop putting those things in because it's like programmed into you.
I think that's a great throw to cut across, Jay. I think that's a great thing when you have the naivety to not know where that thing goes, and before you get into the habit of always going on and 4. You know, whatever, open a hi-hat or putting a crash on 1 or a tom on the end of 3, or, you know, whatever your little drumming nervous tick may be, that little habit, to not have any of that and to be completely naive and open to, I'm going to put the hi-hat there. And us as people that in quotation marks listeners, in the know, go, I didn't sound right there. But who are we to say that that's wrong? It's just, to be open to not really care where that goes. I think there's a lot to be said for that, in terms of, I'm going to play a fill at the end of bar 4. And here comes bar 8, so I'm going to do another little 4 here comes a Made in Dagenham.
And it does depend on your context as well. I just recently sharing something which I'd gone through. I just did a panto depth show, so I had a few charts to learn and so on. And I got sent the tracks, I got sent the charts, and if you've ever done this sort of thing before, but the charts are not like note for note, and they are not often written with the drummer in mind. It's a kind of vague thing, and you have to kind of interpret it quite a bit, which is fine. But I remember I was learning one particular song, and it's this classic, like, none of it, it's not like 4 or 8 bars per line, it's like 5, and then there'll be like 7 on the next line, and then 4 on the next line, and you're like, it's really, you can't just naturally follow it on the page. So there's that. But then also there was a lot of like, you had an 8-bar section, and I knew it was 8 bars long. The first bar would be written because it had like a crash in it. Then it'd be like, play 6 more, and then it will have the 8th bar written with the fill. And that in my head, and that'll be like split across like 2 lines as well. It wouldn't be all in one line. And that in my head, I was like, wait, am I playing 6 bars or 7 bars or 8 bars? And I couldn't figure that out. And then there was like, and with panto stuff, there's like random 2 bars just like slotting, or the changes, they skip half the chorus and go to the next like bit, or the bridge just comes out of nowhere. So it's not that predictable. I was struggling. I was like, I can't just rely on my ear to find this, and I can't just read 8s, And I had to like write. I heard like a random like diminished chord in the last bar, and I was like, that's my cue, and I had to just put like dim chord, and I knew that's what I can recognize it. I was like, that's when I go, and then I'm like, I can't even follow this, I've got to just wait for that.
What you've just described, Jamie, is my idea of hell. Because fair play, dep in a pantomime with short notice and chart war, man. Fair play to you.
I mean, sometimes I'm like, chart's great because reading's fun, but like for me that is.
It's fun.
But when you get that sort of chart, you're like, okay, I've really got to like try and pick it apart. But it's a different skill. Like it's not like what I'm playing is not hard. Like you're playing possibly the most easiest parts that you could play as a drummer. You're talking like grade 2, grade 3 sort of stuff sometimes. But playing it at the right tempo in the right spot, picking out the other little bits that are going on, and you've got all sorts of weird sounds and vocal lines going on over the top. Like, it's different, sort of.
And also, it's you're not playing for singers, you're playing for actors who are reacting to a crowd.
Yeah.
So the timing's different every night. Because my dad used to play pantos, and I've had to sit in when he couldn't make a rehearsal. And it's different in rehearsal because it's the same every night. But in a live pantomime, the audience are laughing longer at different points, or maybe not at all. And it's not like playing the chart. It's you're having to react to like the timing of the actors.
The in between bits is like there's luckily like there's like 6 or 8 songs where like it's to track, and it's like this is what you play.
Great.
And even then there's like lots of rowl and sort of like you're having to kind of anticipate where the clicks are, or it'll be like an immediate tempo change without any counting at all, and you just have to know what it's going to go to. That sort of stuff. Whereas in between that, it's like, the person is slapping the other person over the head, and I have to wait for the moment that he kind of hits him, and then that's when I hit my crash, or that's when I hit my drop. Or like that person's walking, and I've got to try and like get his footsteps, and and that changes like every night. So it's different. It's like they're 2 like different types of things. But like just as another sort of a horror story. It was actually yesterday that I was playing this last show, and in the second half, it was all going fine. In the second half, in one of the songs, the click dropped from 100% to like 5%. All of a sudden, it's like no click, and track basically. Like everything just went. And I think like there's some dodgy DI box or something. Like it was something that was going wrong literally on the last bit of the whole show. And the intro was this like kind of a solo section with just the keys, and it was all stop start, and it was like they're just vibing off each other and that sort of thing. But there is like a loose click, and then out of nowhere it just goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and the drums just like come in, and that cues the whole rest of the cast on stage, and I'm like there pressing my hands to my head, just like, where is the click? Because it was minuscule. And I had to just sort of basically guess to try and bring it all in. And it's not like you have 4; it's just you've got to start at the right point. And when you've done it a few times and like you've practiced it, like you know what that is. But yeah, like if the click disappears like that, it's a nightmare. So yeah, that's just, I didn't know what to do in that situation. To be fair, I just was like, well, there's nothing I can do. You're in the end bit of a show. You just got to kind of do what you can. We made it through in the end. But yeah, like I think Panto is a good example of where you can't really rely on the standard changes or just kind of structures. It's not going to be A B A A or whatever. It's like you've got to figure out your cues, and you've got to be ready to just switch into something immediately. So yeah,
Harry,
it's all about listening.
it's all, man, that sounds lovely. Harry, you're teaching music or songs.
Yeah.
Do you break stuff down into like choruses, verses, and then just repeat that, or do your students come to it from like they just start at the beginning and keep playing, or do they start to get an idea of, right, we've done, this is how long a verse is, and now we're going to go to a chorus because there's a slight change in the chord there? Or how much do they get into that structure, either through your instruction or through their being inquisitive, or is it just like play, start, stop, and they just see it as a kind of...
Yeah, we definitely like break it into chunks. Like depending on the song, we'll start with the chorus if it's like something like super recognizable, like just to kind of get everyone going, like Shotgun by George Ezra. Like Shut Up and Dance, and like Can't Stop the Feeling, and just start with all of those choruses that just like, if you were to say like any of those songs, you would immediately just start singing the chorus. So it's just like an easy way to like get people playing, get the singers singing something, instead of like starting with like a really obscure weird verse that they've probably not heard. They've like, oh yeah, I know that song, I saw it on a film, and they've just picked the, they recognize the chorus. But I'm like very conscious of like making sure they're aware that like this is the verse, and quite a lot of times some songs don't change at all in the verse, like in terms of chord progression. Like Radioactive and Shotgun are basically like the same 4 chords all the way through the song, so that kind of in one way helps you, because you can just set the guitar players and keyboard players up, and bass player just kind of playing the same 4 notes, get the drummers maybe switching from like a hi-hat to a ride in the chorus, and it's the singers are just sort of like just going through the whole song with like no break, or like like, oh, you need to drop out for 4 bars, or for a certain amount of time, whatever it is. And then you get the odd song where it's like the verse is different, the intro is different to the verse, and the keyboard players have got a melody, and then like there's a chorus, but then there's like a re-intro, and like all those sorts of things. It also very much is dictated by the level of the band. But yeah, I definitely make like a conscious effort to be like, we're gonna at least most bands will do like 3 sections, and like an intro, a verse, and a chorus, and maybe we'll do a double chorus at the end. That's like loosely like the structure that we'll learn. But yeah, like definitely, we have it on the iPad with like the lyrics and stuff like that. They're broken up into sections, so the kind of singers will be able to see that. But I think it just helps for like giving them an idea of like where they're going in terms of their learning. Like, right, when if we can do this, we're kind of nearly done with the verse now, and then we can start thinking about the chorus, or drummers, go to the hi-hat here because this is going to be our verse, but when we go back to the chorus, we're going to need to do a drum fill to kind of take the whole band into the next part of the song. And we're going to have to change it up and give it a bit more energy, so we're going to go to the ride cymbal to give it a bit more energy. Or guitar players, instead of just playing each of your 4 chords on beat number 1, now we're going to play them on every beat. to give it a bit more, energy.
Yeah,
I'm talking sort of, sort of kind of super sort of basics and stuff like that. But yeah, there's definitely got to be a bit of shape and structure and stuff like that to just kind of give it all a bit of context. I mean, that's kind of like the whole, real sort of part of this whole episode, isn't it? It's just like the context and the importance of the context around everything that we're doing, and why it's important to know about, not just like where the different parts of our instruments sit across the grid and in the sort of spectrum of, a song, but really what everyone else is doing, and why are they playing that there, and when does that come in, and how fast do I count, and what do I play, and all that sort of stuff. I think it's hugely important. I like the most obvious one for me is always like when the drummers get to learn the drum fill. Like why are we doing a drum fill? Obviously, apart from it sounds cool, so we're going to use it to kind of count everyone in, or you're going to use that to bring the keyboard and the bass player in, and then it's context for everything. Or singers, you're going to start on beat number 3. High Hopes, for example, by Panic at the Disco starts on beat number 3. You start the keyboards. I'm going to get the drummers coming in, 2, 3, hats up, and then everyone's in, and it's just guitar players. Your first note B lands on high, the word high hopes, and so on. Okay, cool. Other than counting, because as many times as you want to tell them they can count, and most of them will, they'll still always forget. But if they have like another thing to latch off of, I need to watch the drummers and do their drum fill, and also the singers are going to say, it's just like covering all the bases. So to answer your question, yes, we do break it down.
No, it's just it's kind of, as I say.
But we would want the same thing, wouldn't we? If we're going to go play the same, like, you'd want.
We get so stuck into the coordination of what we're doing that it's like, well, do we understand? It's that why, isn't it? And maybe it's like I said, it's kind of. I wonder what it'd be like to listen to a concert or go to a gig if we didn't understand how music worked. And I know we've talked about that before in terms of if you know how to be what you're doing as a drummer, you're looking at the technicalities of the show. And I know I've said on the previous show, I struggle to maybe get involved emotionally because I'm looking at how everything works. But having that naivety to ask the question, well, why are we doing that though? And I think
nice.
maybe we've got to embrace that a bit. Yeah, and they are quite. You can't. Well, because we do. It doesn't work. But having that kind of how we listen to the music, and we should probably kind of think about wrapping up, guys. But I was going to ask about active listening. When we're learning parts, in terms of, do you do anything specifically, or when you're listening to a song, if you've not got the chart. You've not got the notation or whatever, like from Jamie's kind of pantomime experience. But do you have a set format for learning a song? If you're even because I've been learning songs recently, some of which I play already in another band, which I think sometimes is worse because you can fall into the way you play it in another band. Yeah. But anything that you guys do when you're kind of doing a deck cover band, for example, cover gig.
Yeah, I was just going to say off of that, I think to kind of, before I answer that question, to kind of wrap up, I think that the whole thing kind of comes down to just doing a lot of listening. Because that really is kind of like the answer to all the questions. Like, listen to the arrangement or the song to get an idea of when you're going to come in, or listen to the
on and off the kit as well.
Exactly.
While you're playing, be listening to where it's going and what people are doing.
How do you know about the structure of a 12 bar blues? Well, listen to a load of blues and you'll find out. Or how do you know about the form of jazz stuff? Listen to a load of all that stuff. I think, and when we like go and see, some of our favorite players, and we like nerd out on all their gear, and we like know what they're using, but we sit back and watch them and we're mind blown. It's just like, well, they probably listen to a load of stuff. That's how they can kind of do it. So listening, I think, is just like, just listen to so much music and listen and watch a load of stuff, and I think you can't go wrong. But for me, Jay, before we hear what you're going to say, for me, as a person that's not a chart person, doesn't really read a lot or take a lot of notes, really. I just listen to it like a bunch. Listen to it especially the gig, in a set order.
Yeah.
And just listen to it passively, like just put the playlist on in the car when I'm driving in at work, when I'm loading in and setting up at work. And then also when I'm maybe driving home, listening to it, but thinking and imagining myself on the kit. Okay, right, we've got this bit coming up. Okay, it's that guitar part. I need to make sure that, that bit comes on the 2. Okay, well then, I'm just trying to figure out all the pieces, almost give myself as many cues as I can within the music. So in a way that I don't maybe have to rely on a notepad, all right, okay, that vocal, that line there, that's when we actually don't go to the second chorus. We go to a re-intro or whatever it is, and try to imagine myself, playing it and think, all right, what stuff am I going to use? How am I going to tune the snare and all that sort of stuff? What am I going to go for? Even to, like you said before, like Matt, like, is there going to, okay, well, I might be able to use my kit, but I might not be able to. So if I can't, what could the kit look like? Endless possibilities. But like for me, it's heavy on the listening and imagining and putting myself in that sort of scenario, and then definitely getting on the practice kit and having a little bash through, just so that the first time I play it isn't the first time I play it, if that makes sense. I played it through the practice, and that's another piece of the puzzle. Okay, at least I've done it, and I kind of I always mess up that fill, so I'll just have to do something, and the story goes on. But for me, hugely, I would say 80% of it, 70% maybe is just listening, and learning and imagining. Yeah, and if I can play it, I absolutely will. It doesn't always happen.
No.
But for me,
cool.
Listening.
Jay, you man, before we wrap up.
I reckon I'm almost totally the opposite to that. I do listen, but I'm probably the opposite way around. I 20% listen and 80% I'll chart it and learn it that way around, because I just the way I work, and I'm beginning to embrace it. I often feel like it's a weakness, but sometimes I think, I think it's helpful for me. But other times I'm like, okay, I relied on my notes way too much, and so I'm just becoming really sort of aware of when I'm doing that. But my go-to, particularly if I'm doing something, I'm cramming it in, or if it's like a song that I'm like, I'm going to play this once with this one band and we're not going to play it again. There's something in my brain that's like, I don't want to be listening to this song all week, especially if I don't like it. And I'll be like, I just want to write it out. And then if it's ever called on a gig, my notes are there. And in some cases, I don't even have to, if I've written my notes well enough, I don't even have to have gone over it. My notes will be, and my notes for me, like I've got them to a point now over the years where like I'll write a certain phrase and I'm like, okay, I know what I mean when I write that. And it will just completely change. It will just change. And I put me at ease of like, right, cool, I know what I'm doing here. And that's all I need often is a little prompt of like, oh yeah, what do I do in this bridge again? Oh yeah, it's that, like, that rhythm that so I tend to chart it out, and that normally for me takes 2 listens. One is the structure, first time through. The second I will go through, and quite often, so for example, if it's like an 8 for the verse, but in the last bar of the verse there's a stop on 1, I'll turn it into 7+1 and then write the word stop, or like plus stop. That to me will be like, there's a stop, and that's important. Most of the time, that sort of stuff, like, it's very obvious, that sort of thing. But first time will be the structure, so that even if in an emergency that's all I had, at least I would have a vague chance of getting through. The second time will be stops and hits. I very rarely write whether it's on the hi-hat or the ride, or like dynamic levels or anything like that. Like that stuff, like just vibe on the night. I end up sometimes playing a chorus on the hi-hat one time, but then another time on that, definitely on the ride. That changes, and I don't want to be that specific, but I'll do 2 listens, one to get the structure, one to get any sort of hits and stops, and then I save that into a massive file that I have of probably over 300 songs now, of just charted out structures. And in my head I'm like, if I ever need to go and learn that song quickly and I haven't played it for 3 years, pull it up, one little run through, great, I remember this now, and cool. I can go. That's my long-winded answer.
No,
I like to know the nuts and bolts of the song as well. I really like to see it almost from like a bird's eye view and be like, oh, that's the journey of the song, and you know, it goes half time at this bit, or there's some stabs at that bit, and like I like to be able to sort of see the whole thing at once. Whereas with listening, unless I'm there the whole time, it's hard for me to follow. Like I'll go out and I'll be like, am I in the second chorus or in the first chorus? Or it all just sounds a bit the same. Or if you're listening to like a disco tune, I'm like, I don't know how many times they've sung Freak Out. Like the chorus just goes on and on and on for ages. You know, like you don't want to do it. For me, I'm like, right, I just need to know the number, and then I can feel that number when I'm on the gig. It's fine. So yeah, that's how I approach it anyway. Anyway, How about you, Matt? How
very quickly, I'm well. If Harry's 20/80 and you're 80/20, I'm 50/50.
Nice.
So I will passive listen. I've got the set of Spotify, but I've got just been sent 2 Spotify playlists actually. Set 1, set 2 have been really useful in order, and loads of notes about these are all the live versions. We stop here, we change here, etc., etc. Or this is a medley, finish after chorus 2, and then on to the next song. I passive listen and I know the song, and I go, okay, right, and I'm really listening for anything that doesn't feel natural. So what I would play, that's different to what I. So I'm making a mental note of, there's a stop there which I wasn't expecting, or it's on the 3, or maybe naturally if there's a fill on 4 under and you're expecting a stab on 1, but there isn't. It's 4 under. Okay, I need to make sure I don't go 4 under 1. So I will passive listen as much as I can, but I'm kind of making mental notes about, I know this one, and it is as per I know it, so I'm probably not going to put too much effort into that one. But I will still chart out every song. So tempo, name of the song, tempo, where I come in, 4-bar guitar intro, in, or 8, or 4+4, and then Vox in, whatever it might be. And I'll write out the section, so it'll be 4, chorus will be 8+8, and then whatever it might be, stop. And similar to you, Jamie, if it's an 8-bar phrase but there's a stop, I'll 7+1. If I put 1 over 1, that's beat 1 of bar 1 over 2, 1 over 3, 1 over 4. So I know it's kind of it's on the stop is on the 4 of that bar, or it's on beat 1. Because very often we can get where we fall into the trap, it's going to be on beat 1 of the next phrase. The next 8. So So, and then if there's a specific figure, like I will write out, I might write. So this fill here is all triplets. So I might just very small write. I might just chart out triplets. On in my imaginary stave. But like you say, when I look at that, and I've got an old school A4 pad, and most of my songs are all on one page, well maybe 2 on one page. But even if I know the song, just so I'm not a rabbit in the head, so the chart I'm writing is for the rehearsal, because I won't have it on the gig. So what I'm doing is setting myself up to play it as perfectly as possible in rehearsal.
Nice.
So that it's kind of, once you've done, like you listen, but once you've played it once,
I was going to say that
it's internalized then, isn't it?
Once you do it on the gig once, that's it, you're good.
Yeah.
Do the job of it,
if I can do that, it's to set me up to do it well on the rehearsal, and then I don't need the book because I know it. But even if it's even if it's like All Right Now by Free, or even if it's really kind of, Born to Be Wild or whatever by Steppenwolf, which I know is on this gig, I will still write out, this is the tempo, it's a 4-click all in, or guitar for 4, and I know it, and it's like, we're going to play this, and they started it. But it's just so I'm not second guessing. This band do it how again? It is how it is.
And that's partly why I do all the range that I do as well, because there's different versions of so many things. Some are with track and some are without. Some's 2-bar counting, some's 4-bar counting. I'm like, I can't remember how they do it, and you want to just turn up, do the job as if you're the drummer, Sorry, Harry. You were gonna say.
No, I was just gonna say the best kind of gigs for that are like I do like a bandioki thing. And it's just like the singers are dictating what they're going to sing. And it could be like absolutely anything. Like last time I did it, I had we started with Black Velvet, then went to Living on a Prayer, then did Killing in the Name, which I was like, I've not heard that song in years. I was like, how does it start? It starts with hits. It's like, oh yeah, of course. You know, like, again, I played that song before, so I did not even think about it really. I was just having fun and rocking out.
That must have been fun to play. I'd love to play that.
It was really good fun. Yeah, it was really good fun. And then they're like Basket Case. I was like, yeah, sure, done that a few times. Firework, Katy Perry, you know, just all these, you know, just you covering so much.
Yeah.
And you just got to go like, yeah, okay, cool, here we go. 2, 3, 4. And you're just in, you know, and you know, if not, you just kind of.
In some ways, they're the best gigs because there's no expectation because you're just turning up and playing.
I think this could be a whole podcast. I know.
Yeah.
For me, like this the band Oki stuff, like I could do that if I trusted the musicians I was with. There are certain musicians I play with. I'm like, if you can vibe off each other, I'm like, hell, even if I never heard the song, I'd give it a go. Like, and you'd have a go at it. I actually find that I need my notes most when I know I'm on a gig with, I don't know, a vocalist that I know probably hasn't learned all the words. And, you know, and you're like, that can throw you because if you take a vocal cue without realizing, or, you know, they start the chorus early or something like that, and you're playing to track is even worse. Like you got to know exactly what you're doing. So sometimes, on gigs where I know I'm playing with someone that is maybe not as confident, I actually quite like having the structure just like there in my face, just in case they go off and I go, hang on, is that right? And then I'm like, no, I'm right. Get back. You know, and then you can change it.
So join us in our next episode, listeners, which will be called "Playing with Singers That Don't Know What They're Doing."
I was going to say, I think we should we knock this on the head before we start?
We all get sacked of all of the jobs we've got.
What have I done? I'm going to open a can of worms now. No shade to all the singers I've played with.
I
love you all.
I love you all, and you're all brilliant. Yeah, if you could just help carry some stuff out the van, that'd be great.
Words. I would be terrible.
I
had to remember words, man.
I mean, I've stood at the front and with the microphone to do talking. And you're like, I'd much rather be sat behind a drum kit, out the way, in the dark, at the back.
We've got it easy. We're right out the way.
Just tap along.
I'll happily carry this all in and set it all up and move house every time I've got a gig because I sit at the back. But I do have the last laugh because everyone looks at me when it comes to the end.
It really doesn't matter what we play because everything else is dictated by you guys. So all the respect for the singers.
Yes, absolutely. I think we've backpedaled just enough, gents, and recovered. I hope. If you haven't got any complaints, please send them to Jamie Joyner at the Countess in Podcast.
I'm sorry, guys.
I should just quickly. We'll wrap up there, gents. But I just wanted to quickly say before Harry wraps us up. There you go, Harry. I've teed you up. I just want to quickly say thank you very much to Danielle and Mark out there. You know who you are. Who have very kindly bought us coffees recently. I was unable to message you, Danielle, because I don't follow you and I'm not able to follow you to message you. But thank you for that. We do appreciate
thanks,
it,
guys.
And if this has been entertaining for you and you're listening, or you've been nodding profusely at all those bits, or shaking your head and maybe you don't agree, you can find us on @CountessInPodcast on Instagram, or buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/CountessInPodcast. I'm getting good at that.
That's it.
You've wrapped up now. You teed Harry up.
Sorry, I
think
I think we did forget to mention the YouTube channel at the end of the last episode, I think.
Oh, yeah. All the episodes.
Go on, Harry, go for it.
I was going to say that, the episodes are on YouTube every other week. So the Friday that this comes out, it'll be on YouTube next week. So, keep an eye out for that. We're posting clips every now and again on the socials. And I think we're now approaching episode 50. And we've got a few things sort of in the pipeline, some guests and so on, which will be exciting. It's looking cool. And there was also, we were gonna obviously we've been sort of adding in a sort of a couple of new segments and stuff to something new, which we should definitely return next week. Now that the Christmas dust has settled. And we were also going to talk a little bit about practice as well. Off of the back of the last episode, kind of talking about accountability and stuff like that, and kind of
I'm getting nervous now. Practice.
We were going to we're thinking about discussing practice semi-regularly to our episodes. So maybe we'll discuss that in greater detail next week, as we've kind of gone on quite a lot today. But yeah, that's another thing that you guys can kind of look out for, and maybe also it could be a thing that we could kind of get people involved with as well, and get people kind of chiming in on what they've been practicing and stuff like that, so we can all together, be held responsible to try and make our drumming lives a bit better. So
Yeah,
Nice.
we'll discuss that in detail next week, or next episode, I should say. But yeah, thanks guys. That was really cool. Really good stuff in there. And yeah, hope everyone found it useful. And as Matt said, if you'd like to, if you feel so way inclined, please do buy us a coffee, and keep an eye out for us on the old socials and YouTube and all that good stuff.
Good chat,
It's
guys.
been a
We've probably
pleasure.
gone on a bit longer than we expected, so thanks for sticking with us, everyone. But
On a roll.
Nice one. We're on a roll with it all.
We're
Great.
fired up. Can't help it.
Going to go and practice now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice one.
Nice one.
Right, thank you
Cheers,
all.
guys. Thanks, everyone, for listening.
Yeah.
Take care,
Catch
everyone.
you soon.
Bye.